I ended up reading an 18,000 word philosophy paper from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy to answer this one question. Are Platonic forms outerversal? Yeah, I had absolutely nothing better to do. Before we answer the question, are Platonic concepts outerversal? What is a Platonic concept, and the does outerversal mean? Let's start with outerversal, as if you are not familiar with power scaling, you are probably very confused right now. Outerversal is a tier in a tiering system. Tiering systems allow power scalers to determine how powerful a character is. There are two main systems that people use, Versus Battle Wiki and Character Stats and Profiles. Both of these have different qualifications for each tier, and they specifically differ when it comes to outerversal. Versus Battle Wiki's qualification is transcending infinite dimensions. Versus Battle does this by going beyond infinity via Aleph numbers. I'm not going to dive into the cancer that is set theory and higher sets of infinity, but I will leave resources in the description if you want to look into it. Just know that Versus Battle's definition is still bound by dimensionality. And also just act like you know something is past infinity. Character Stats and Profiles qualifications for outer are characters that are beyond all dimensional scale. Character Stats definition is actually above Versus Battle's highest tier called Boundless, as Boundless is ironically still bound by dimensionality. Now that you have a PhD understanding of what outerversal means, let's move on to Platonic concepts. To understand Platonic concepts, also known as Platonic forms, you have to understand Platonism. Platonism is simply put the idea that abstract objects actually exist. These abstract objects are what the physical world partakes in. Think of a horse. A horse exists in reality, but what about the idea of a horse? In Platonism, the idea of a horse also exists. This idea has an abstract existence. Abstract in this sense means non-physical and non-temporal. A physical horse would be something called a particular. Particulars are physical things, such as my computer, the earth, the sun, and the car that won't shut up when I'm recording. Each of these things partakes in an abstract form. These abstract forms called phenomena are perfect representations of particulars. They are also necessary for particulars to exist. If the form of a tree ceased to exist, so would the particular of a tree. Now think of beauty. Beauty can exist in multiple things. It can exist in art, a flower, the sculpture I made of Plato out of Play-Doh, and most relevantly, other forms. For example, the form of earth can partake in beauty. Because of this, beauty is a higher form called a universal. Universals are concepts that multiple objects can partake in. For example, redness can show up in multiple things, such as an apple, a kite, and various other red objects. If you were to delete the concept of redness, red apples and all red objects would cease to exist. Universal forms include geometry, colors, beauty, math, along with other concepts. Now, what about the form of perfection? If you were paying attention, you would remember that each form is perfect, so each form partakes in perfection. This form is called the form of the good. The form of the good stands atop all concepts, and without it, nothing would exist. Plato makes an analogy between the good and the sun. Just as the sun casts light to allow us to see, the form of the good allows things to exist. So to sum all of that up, particulars participate in phenomenon, and phenomena participate in universals, and all of these participate in the good. So with all of that said, are Platonic concepts outerversal? Under Versus Battle Wiki's definition, no, but under Character Stats and Profiles, yes. Platonic forms are non-spatial and they are perfect. They are also transcendent over the physical world, as described in Plato's cave analogy. What we see are merely shadows of what is true. This would mean they exceed the structure of dimensionality. This would fit the Character Stats and Profiles definition of low outer at a minimum, with the form of the good potentially being outer to high outer. For Versus Battle, Platonic concepts would scale above the tiering system. With how Versus Battle's tiering system works, there are higher sets of infinite, and they allow for those higher sets to correspond to dimensions. This is extended higher and higher, with it going into inaccessible cardinals and above. The thing is, it never exceeds dimensionality like Platonic concepts do. While Platonic forms are abstract, this does not mean all abstracts are outer. An abstract can have a different definition, and Platonism is not the only philosophy when it comes to ideas. There is nominalism, which straight up denies concepts like universals and abstracts. There's also conceptualism, which only believes these ideas exist in our heads. You also have to remember, when talking about fiction, there is no limit to how these can be interpreted. An author who knows nothing about Platonic concepts can call something Platonic, and it does not mean it will follow the rules of Platonism at all. A general rule of thumb is to go off how the verse describes stuff and not Google's definition of a word or phrase. This is called Grice's razor, and if you want to know about it and other razors, I did a video on the topic. This was optimized, and I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. I will see you in the next video.